So today is the 2 year anniversary of Astroworld by Travis Scott, the album. 2 year anniversary of that album coming out. Came out on August, oh god, I don't even know the date. August 3rd of 2018. And to this day, it's still one of the very few hip hop projects, in my opinion, that actually lived up to the massive amount of hype that it garnered in like the years prior to this. Travis Scott had been hyping up Astroworld, the album, since I think since his first album that came out, since Rodeo came out, and it had been years since that. Since he first cynically announced Astroworld and when it finally came out, so it had an insane amount of hype behind it, and it lived up to it, and in my opinion, kind of exceeded out a lot, which is very notable, especially in hip hop, which I feel like that's very hard to do. Live up to the hype of your release, especially that much of it. I'll save my full thoughts on this album for a completely different time, but I will say that it's insanely underrated how much removing the feature on the track list contributed to the reception of the album. Like, honestly, hearing that Drake, on I can't do it, but you know what I'm talking about, on Sicko Mode, or like hearing like The Weeknd just kind of slide in on Skeletons for the first time. Like, I would pay so much money to experience those things again. I think removing those, and again, I'll talk about this on a completely separate occasion, but I think that omitting the features from your songs on your album is a really good idea, because it ups the surprise factor when you just kind of hear like you're like, oh, so and so's on this song, that's crazy. I think it adds a lot to it in a lot of ways. But yeah, 2 years of Astroworld, great album. I gotta listen to it in full. I still listen to songs from it all the time, but I mean, it's a great full project. I don't know how you haven't heard it already if you haven't, but if you still haven't heard one of the biggest trap albums come out in years, go check that album out. Alright, so welcome everyone to the latest installment of New Music Monday. And today, this past weekend, there weren't a ton of... On Thursday, I mentioned that there wasn't a ton of music that I was looking forward to, and that still kind of holds up. Not a whole lot came out. A whole bunch of singles came out that I want to talk about that I actually had a lot of interest in. And then there is a quote-unquote album that came out that I'll talk about. It's Beyonce's Black is King visual album that I will talk about at the end. So yeah, let's just jump into it. So as always, we start off with the singles, and for the most part, these are organized just kind of sporadically, except for the last two, which actually I'll say for the last two are dramatically better than the other ones than the first two I'll talk about, but I'll cover that later. So the first single I want to talk about today is called Make Me Feel by Skip Marley, Rick Ross, and Ari Lennox. I truly had no idea what the song would sound like when I first saw it on Spotify's new music, but I will say that I was fairly impressed. The song is structured around like this lavish... I have Plucky here. I'm not really sure how else to describe it, but Plucky is the first word that came to mind when I heard it. So we'll just roll with it for now. And there's a very sharp... The song's structured around a very lavish, plucky, and sharp snare-led instrumental. And in my opinion, each artist does a pretty good job of molding the beat to their strengths. Marley's verse is not as good as his contribution in the chorus. Necessarily, he starts off the song with his own verse and then goes into the chorus after that. But I think they're both very nice to listen to. If you're I guess a decent fan of the quote unquote like reggae voice, reggae vibe, then you'll appreciate his contribution to the song. Rick Ross just does normal Rick Ross things for his verse. He doesn't really switch up. One thing about Rick Ross that I don't really like, but at the same time I kind of have to respect in a way, is that he doesn't switch up his style much at all. In his songs, in his verses, really anywhere, he kind of sticks to the same Rick Ross sound and kind of flow and material for the most part, which, I mean, he kind of owns that field, but, I mean, it's never bad. It's just kind of like, it's normal Rick Ross things, and that does not change whatsoever on this song. ad-libs are all the same. The Maybach Music production tag is there, of course. Luxury rap and everything that you know about Rick Ross, that's all this verse is. It's nothing special from him, but like I said, his verses never disappoint, and he did what he did. He did what he could on this song. Ari Lennox, I've said before on this podcast, I'm not the biggest fan of Ari or her voice, but as I'm learning, I very much prefer Ari Lennox as an artist that you go to for like background vocals, almost like how you just kind of like throw Ty Dolla $ign vocals on a song just randomly. I'm liking her more in that aspect where she's not like front and center a lot of times, but more when she's doing backup vocals or going back and forth on like the chorus or anything like that. And that's pretty much exactly what she did here. Like I said, she had a very let me see. On this song in particular, she has a very limited contribution, and she's mostly only present through, like I said, the background vocals throughout the entire song. She just kind of has like random, like I'll say like repeated lines or like echoed lines where the main singer or like she's basically just echoing what Skip Marley or what Rick Ross are saying, or just kind of putting in just like random vocal runs somewhere. She's mostly found throughout the song in those background vocals, and then she also shares the chorus, the second run of the chorus with Skip Marley. And like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of Ari Lennox yet, but maybe she's just growing on me. But her contributions to this song are pretty damn good from the very small parts that she's actually in. And yeah, again, that was Make Me Feel. Next song I have is called My Oasis by Sam Smith and Burna Boy. And I mean, what I'll say is Sam Smith comes through with another like vocal heavy pop juggernaut. It's not a juggernaut. It's Sam Smith. It's a pop song, but heavily focused on his vocals, which, I mean, I like Sam Smith's voice a good bit, but a lot of times he kind of leans too heavily on it to the point where just kind of the instrumental doesn't really match it well, so it just kind of, the song as a whole just kind of falls apart. But this song, for the most part, I like, or as I should say, I like about half of it. Smith sounds pretty incredible, as always, like I said. And the instrumental, like I said, it actually supports him pretty damn well on this song. I think it does so by creating an environment where it seems like you're floating through a deep bass. It's just really like, it almost seems drowned, the instrumental. It's really deep, it's really like rumbling, and it sounds good with Sam Smith singing over it. It gives him a really good foundation. It's really deep and heavy, like I said, and there's this Spanish guitar and some snares at parts that provide some pace in some sections and a lot of sensuality at appropriate times in the song that, they're not like overwhelming by any means, and they're only put exactly where they need to be, which makes the song sound so much more put together and sounds like they actually put a lot of thought into it, which I appreciate. They didn't just loop the same guitar run over and over and over again. Where this song falls flat for me is with Burna Boy's verse, and like he kind of has like a short actual isolated verse about halfway through the song, and then at the very end of the song he kind of has a few more lines that he goes through. But I didn't like any of his contributions. I don't listen to Burna Boy's music. I'm not familiar with his music at all, and I will say that after hearing this song, I'm not any more invested in hearing what his music is like. I'm not a big fan of his voice at all, and I mean, I'm not a fan of the vibe that he had, especially on this song. So, I mean, it wasn't super offensive to the point where it's just like I'll skip the song as soon as it comes on, but it definitely did not add anything to the song as a whole, and definitely, in my opinion, really it kind of took away from it a little bit from my listening experience. But again, it wasn't terrible. It's not terrible by any means. It's not going to come on and then you just immediately jump to the skip button. It's not that bad. But I mean, go check it out. I think other than that, it's still a pretty good listen. And I won't say that I'm excited for whatever Sam Smith has coming. I think this is maybe his second second or third single that's probably gonna be put on his next album. I can't remember when his last album came out, but I mean, I'll look out for it when it comes out. I guess I'll probably hear it on the radio at some point, but go check it out. Again, it's called My Oasis. Next song I did mention that this was the one song that was actually announced that I was looking forward to on Thursday, and it's called Move Your Hips by A$AP Ferg, Nicki Minaj, and Made in Tayo. Oh my lord, Made in Tayo. It's funny that my voice cracked by saying that guy's name, because oh my gosh, I hate this guy so much. I hate his voice. It sounds so like, I don't know, it's so high pitch. I don't know if it's always like that or if it's mixed to be that way. But honestly, just get him the hell out of this song. And he's the first thing you hear too. That's the worst part, is that you don't even get kind of like lubed up before you get fucked over by his voice at all. It's just like, I don't know, his contribution is horrible in this song. And he only does the chorus. It's just the chorus. And the chorus isn't complex at all. It's only like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 lines of him repeating the same thing over and over and over again. It's just bad. It's super bad. And at some point, it's bad when you first hear it, and then it's straight up annoying the second and third, and I think maybe even fourth time that you hear it throughout the song. On the bright side, though, Ferg and especially Nicki Minaj really popped the fuck off, which they needed to, because, oh my god, that they needed to pull so much slack from Made in Tayo to make this song listenable in the slightest bit, and they did. Technically, I'm pretty sure that this is A$AP Ferg's song, but after listening to it, it really should be Nicki Minaj's song, because Nicki Minaj far and wide had the best part of this song, or had the best appearances on this song. Her flow here reminds me of her I'm going to call it the double time flow on Motorsport with Migos and Cardi B, which came out, years and years and years ago. But it's not actually when I heard it, I was like, all right, I heard her rap like this before, and I was trying to figure it out, and then yesterday I was like, oh, it's from Motorsport. It's just like clicked. It's from Motorsport. That similar flow. At least that's what it reminds me of. But needless to say, I liked it a lot. She, again, neither her nor A$AP Ferg are really saying anything important, which is perfectly fine, because I would say that this song is more of like, just like a vibe to put on. It's just maybe like filler music might be a better way to put it. There's nothing important in it. You just kind of throw it on. It's just playlist filler. How's that? It's just like playlist filler. That's probably a better way to do it. And, I mean, it's worth noting that it's only 2 minutes and 30 seconds long, give or take. But, like, it's 2.5 minutes long. It's really just in there to get in, get out, which, y'all, if you guys have been listening to my past episodes, I'm a big fan of getting in, doing what you want to do, and getting the hell out. Just don't waste time. Big fan of that. The problem with that is that the vibe that you get from this song at only being 2 minutes and 30 seconds long is that the vibe is just destroyed every single time Made in Tayo pops up, which is way more than it should be. Every time you hear that stupid ass skirt ad-lib that he did, and I'm not gonna say he popularized it, but I can't dig all day about how bad Made in Tayo is, especially on this song, and I won't, or I won't try to, but it's just so bad. If the song was like more fleshed out, like it was just a little bit longer, or at least had more like solid, because the song is structured very oddly. It's like Made in Tayo has his chorus, and then Ferg jumps in, and then and then Made in Tayo comes back in for the chorus very shortly. Like Ferg has a very short, like maybe like 8 bars maybe, and then Tayo comes back in, unfortunately, and then Nicki comes in, and then she gets cut off by Ferg, and then I think they go back to Made in Tayo, and then they go back to Nicki, and then they go back to A$AP. It's so oddly structured, but if it was like more well put together, and I think Nicki Minaj and A$AP Ferg, I think if they actually like put a little bit more, I don't want to say effort, because I mean, I'm assuming they put a decent bit of effort into this. Neither of them sound like they phoned in their verse. Maybe Ferg a little bit, and I mean, even I guess Nicki Minaj to an extent, but maybe they just looked better compared to just the dumpster fire that is Made in Tayo. But I'm not even gonna spell his name out if you've never heard of him. If you've never heard of him, you're probably better off. But if Nicki's and Ferg's contributions were more fleshed out and had a little bit more seriousness paid attention to them, and then if you just removed Tayo's contributions, I feel like the song would be pretty damn good, like really good. But I mean, the way it is now, especially with, again, Made in Tayo being in there, it's just the definition of mid. This is a song that is just clearly mid. It's not every part of it is bad. It doesn't have it has good parts in it, but the two balance out in a way where it's just mid. But oh well. Again, that was called Move Your Hips. And again, going back to what I talked about on Thursday, the music that I was looking forward to coming out this weekend, it was rumored that Future and Lil Uzi Vert were going to release a full joint tape or project or album, whatever, this past weekend, which they didn't end up doing. However, they did release 2 singles, I believe on either Friday, like midday Friday, or Saturday. They released on a weird day, just like in the middle of nowhere. But the 2 songs are called Patek, whatever, how you want to pronounce it. Well, it's like Patek Philippe, but I guess it's called... Uzi calls it Patek, but it's Patek, whatever. Patek. And then the other song is called Over Your Head. And it seems like Future and Uzi are taking a similar approach to this joint album as Future did with his joint album with Drake, way back in 2015 with What a Time to Be Alive. And by that I mean it seems like each song, or at least in this specific case with these 2 songs, each song kind of leans to one of the artist's specific music styles. So if you can remember back to What a Time to Be Alive, if you listen to that mixtape, the songs for the most part either sounded like a Drake song or they sounded like a Future song. And then, each artist would then kind of chameleon their sound to fit that style. And essentially that's what they did here with these 2 songs. I'm just going to assume, purely based off of how these 2 songs are structured, that that's how their project is going to be structured when and if it eventually comes out. Because again, just rumors that it even exists. I'm sure it does, but oh yeah, I like Patek a lot more than I do Over Your Head. It's worth noting that Patek sounds more like a Future song, and that Over Your Head sounds a lot more like an Uzi song. And as soon as you turn on, I think it's more obvious on Over Your Head, as soon as you turn on that song, like the little playful instrumental that they have that comes on right away, it sounds like an Uzi song. It's a lot more noticeable. Again, by comparison, Patek sounds a lot more like a Future song, and for that reason, I think that's kind of the basis of why I like Patek a little bit more. It's because I feel like just the Future sound and style is a little bit harder hitting, and it's more, it more achieves its goal as like an actual song than Over Your Head does. I mean, I found Over Your Head isn't bad by any means, but I found the melody that they went with on Over Your Head to be kind of annoying, or not annoying, but just kind of mediocre. Just kind of like, I've heard this before, and it's kind of not thrown together, but this sounds like a slightly bit more phoned in than Patek, even though they both are realistically not outside of the lanes that either of these rappers go in and out of all the time. So, it could just be, I'm just not a big a fan of the Uzi sound much anymore. That could really be a big deal, or a big contribution to how little I like the song compared to Patek. But I mean, it's not bad, it's kind of meh. Patek, on the other hand, is pretty damn good in my opinion, and I mean, this what I would call at least, a trap banger to an extent. I'm sure, the banger gets thrown around all over the top, like just all the time, but I mean, I would consider this to be like a true banger. And I can see myself going back to this song a lot given the correct environment, and by that I mean, this thing rings off in the car. This thing would definitely ring off in a club. But, it's good. It just needs the right environment to get played on. The only problem with this song that I found is that it's, and again, this is my own personal preference of genre song structure, especially with this genre, is that my problem is that this song is pretty much 5 minutes long. I think the exact length is like 4 minutes and like 40 seconds or something like that. It's long. It's a long trap song. That's a long song to use the trap style. And honestly, this song could be cut in half and it would be so much better. I shouldn't say so much better. It would be a good bit better if you just cut the song in half. Like they don't do any more after the first 2.5 minutes that they couldn't have lived without. Honestly, but that's me kind of nitpicking. It's fine. It's honestly, while I did say that I like it a lot, I'll probably end up skipping this song as I'm listening to it halfway through because, like I said, again, you can get everything that the song offers in the first 2.5, 3 minutes and then just be done with it. Otherwise, it just kind of overstays its welcome. And again, with these two, they're not really reinventing the wheel by any means with these songs, but in my opinion, they did their job to make me somewhat interested in this joint project or whatever they have coming up. I'm interested. I mean, I'm always interested in new music, especially from big names. But I mean, this made me interested in this made me feel like I might actually enjoy a good part of this album or this project, whenever they choose to release it. And of course, when they release it, I will share my full thoughts here with you guys. Again, those two songs were called Patek, Patek, and then Over Your Head by Future and Lil Uzi Vert. Okay, so last two songs I have are far and wide my favorite songs that came out this past week, and they're both slower. Or one of them is very much R&B, the other one is, I don't even know what you would peg this, but you'll get it. Okay, first song I'll talk about is called My Future by Billie Eilish. This song is fantastic. This song is really good. I think she released it like maybe midday Thursday or midday Wednesday. Maybe midday Thursday. That sounds more correct. But as soon as I heard the song, I was pretty well impressed. I was pretty impressed with how much, not necessarily impressed with the song itself, but impressed with how much I like the song. And mostly that's because I wouldn't call myself a big Billie Eilish fan, but ever since I first heard her, I was like insanely impressed with how much her very, very unorthodox, like very breathy, dark and like somber voice made it into mainstream, and even more so mainstream pop music. Since that sound was realistically insanely against the grain. I mean, like, while I have my opinions on Billie Eilish industry-wise, in short, I think to an extent she's an industry plant, and I'll talk more about that on a separate episode. But it's still crazy to me that if I'm rolling with this industry plant theory of hers, it's still crazy to me that it's so successful. Because I mean, like, she's a superstar just out of nowhere with a sound that is not popular whatsoever, or wasn't popular before her. She makes a lot of the sound that she goes with, and the sound that took precedence on her last album. I forget the name of it, but I mean, I'm sure you guys know of it at this point. But it's it's kind of tongue-in-cheek referred to as anti-pop. Maybe not tongue-in-cheek, but it's referred to as anti-pop. And what I take that as, it's just kind of, it has a lot of elements of pop, but it's kind of not a parody of it, but it's very, like I said, it's against the grain. It takes a lot, it exists in the same lane as pop music, but still goes completely against the grain of what traditional pop music sounds like. And again, for that, I'm insanely impressed by and that speaks to how talented she and her brother are at making music, because she has garnered an insane fan base in an insanely short amount of time, mind you, just off that sound, which is notable. But while I really loved her voice and what she is doing to the music scene in general, none of her songs really connected with me to the point where it's just kind of like I could really give a lot of personal. I couldn't personally regard any of her projects very highly, just because again I'm not. None of them really connected to me. None of them. While every song that I've heard is good objectively, it's just not music that I would necessarily listen to after the fact for the most part. So again, that was my thought until this song came out. And again, it's good. It's really good. It's a really good song. The first half has Billie Eilish showcasing her. I'm gonna say right now that her vocals are now iconic at this point. I'm just gonna say that. Oh my god. Ugh. I'm gonna just make the claim that, and this is my own claim, of course, that if not, it's like calling an album classic, like in a year after it came out, or like the first week it came out. I think that her vocals are, if they're not now, they will be iconic at some point. But the first song showcases these vocals over this insanely stripped back instrumental. There's like nothing to it. What that does is it creates this eerily beautiful environment that's just easy to just kind of get like lost in, especially in conjunction with her voice, which is just kind of insanely slow, insanely quiet, insanely, I don't want to say seductive, but just kind of, it grabs your attention and it holds it captive. It's insanely, I'll shout out Phineas, her producer, and her brother for making this instrumental, because it does exactly what it's supposed to do insanely well, and that's get you hooked. Then about the halfway point of the song, Phineas decided to just hit me and every listener of the song over the head with this just like out of nowhere awesome funky R&B instrumental that, in my opinion, adds to the personality of the song immensely, and to me really gives me the personality that I didn't even know I wanted from an artist like Billie Eilish. Again, Billie Eilish to me exists in the plane of pop music, where I wouldn't really think that. I mean, she obviously has a voice where she could dip into R&B music or to like R&B-esque music, alternative R&B music. I just never thought that would be the sound that she would kind of go to on like a single, or especially not a lead single, which I'm again assuming this song to be a lead single to some sort of album that she has coming up. It's just interesting that I never thought that she would go with that for what I'll call a flagship single that she's going to be marketing an entire project off of. Maybe like an album cut could sound like this, but I was just surprised to hear, I mean, I guess you can call it a beat switch. I was surprised to hear this quote-unquote beat switch halfway through the song, but I mean, I was insanely happy with it. It sounds great. The song itself is about Billie Eilish being in love with her future self. From what's said in the song, this to me comes off of, or at least she's saying that she's in love with herself, her future self, both professionally and personally, it seems. And at this point in her career, it's a very welcome message to hear, especially considering I mean, I'm not the biggest follower of Billie Eilish, but I have done a slight bit of research of her just throughout the year since she's become insanely popular. And you know, her music is somber for the most part, so I would have to imagine that her personality or her mindset hasn't exactly been the brightest a lot of times. Again, I'm making an assumption here based off of the music I'm listening to and nothing else. But it's nice to hear that, it's always nice to hear that somebody, especially an artist, is very happy with the way that they see themselves. I always love hearing that, and it's also very nice to listen to as a consumer. If her next album contains this level of musicality, it's safe to say that I'm actually excited. Like I am genuinely excited. If she releases another single and it has this level of musicality that I can connect to, I'm going to love that album. I would love that album. Again, I don't think that she's really gonna make any bad music per se to me, But, you know, it takes a lot for me to it takes a lot for me to get excited about an album, especially before it comes out. So, you know, at this point I'm excited. At this point I'm excited. But yeah, definitely go listen to that song. Again, it's called My Future by Billie Eilish. And the last song that I will talk about, ironically, this is probably the song I have the least notes on. That's for a reason. The song is called By Any Means, and it is by Georgia Smith. And what I'll say about this song, or what I'll start to say about this song, is that it is godlike to me. It's godlike objectively too. I feel like this is just like an objectively insanely well-made sounding song. It's perfect. I'm talking like top tier traditional R&B music. This is top tier. I've been following Georgia Smith for not a while, but ever since before her debut album came out, I've been following Georgia Smith, and I've always thought that she's an insanely talented vocalist, R&B vocalist, insanely talented. But to a degree, I always kind of thought she was punching a little under her class. I don't know the exact phrase because I'm terrible at stuff like that. But I don't know, like while I've loved a lot of her music since I've quote unquote discovered her, I still think that her ceiling is much higher than what she kind of is performing at, even with her performing at such a high level, in my opinion. And this song is a good example of what that ceiling really looks like. This song is good. This song is super good. And the only reason I'm mad at this song is that now I have to add this next Georgia Smith album to the list of R&B albums that I just desperately need. This now joins the ranks of Bruno Mars and SZA to me for R&B albums that I just desperately need. Which is a nice list to have, but it's an upsetting list to look at because I don't know when the hell we're gonna get those albums. And now I just have another one that it's gonna pain me every week that I don't get it. But I mean, I guess that just speaks to how interested I am. By the way, just quick side note: go listen to her debut album, Lost and Found. It's incredible, and suffice to say, great R&B album. Definitely go listen to it. Yeah, sorry. Georgia Smith plug aside, going back to the song, this song has really everything I need in what I would call a traditional R&B song. Perfectly layered vocals, and by that I mean not specifically her front and center vocals, but all the effects that they layer on top of it to support her throughout her verses. Those are on point. Sexy flow. Insane solo vocal performance. That's what I'm referring to as the front and center vocals. There's a lot of there's an insane amount of emotion. At some points, it seems like she's insanely close to just like crying right there into the microphone. It's just, you can just hear it. You can just hear it in her voice, and it just adds so much to the song, and it adds to how involved I am in the song itself. Super impactful chorus. Simple yet accentuated instrumental. Everything is there. Everything that I need in a R&B song is there. It's top notch, first in class. It's there. It's perfect. This song went instantaneously into my favorite songs of the year. Like, as soon as I heard it, honestly, I was like hovering my finger over the add to playlist after like the first 20 some seconds of this song. I was hovering, and it didn't take me long to confirm it into that, but this song is insane. If you're gonna listen to any song on today's that I talk about on today's episode, make sure it's this one. Just make sure it is this song. Again, it's called By Any Means by Georgia Smith. If you don't know who that is, if you're not sure how to spell Georgia Smith, Jorja, and then Smith like Smith. Easy as that. And yeah, so that wraps up the singles that I want to talk about today, and that takes us to the albums. And it was weird. As I was going through the music that came out, I was thinking about how I was going to do this week's podcast, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll talk about the singles, but other than that, like, there are no albums that interest me that came out, so I guess it's going to be pretty short. or it's going to be the first Monday episode without me talking about the album, until I remembered that Beyonce released a quote-unquote visual album called Black is King. This was, like I said, Beyonce released this album on Friday called Black is King at like 3 a.m. or something like that. It's a visual album, and it's made in conjunction with the live-action Lion King movie that was released in 2019, which he was involved with, obviously. You can only stream this album on Disney Plus, which is dumb, but whatever. I understand. Dumb from a consumer standpoint, but understandable from an industry standpoint. And as I continue to talk about this album, you understand why I'll say this. But this album is easy to tell that this album was just made. Well, it was just part of her contract for the movie. She definitely signed that contract for that movie, her quote-unquote acting role, or her voice acting role, and then this was part of her contract to just make this visual album. But I mean, hey, if you still have, and obviously it's a Disney movie, so it's only going to be put on Disney Plus. But, you know, if you have some time left on your free trial because you wanted to try out Hamilton on Disney Plus, check it out. Otherwise, this album, quote unquote visual album, is not worth the price of admission, in my opinion. So yeah, that's my short analysis of it. But, you know, I'll go into it a little bit, not too much, but a little bit. So when this album was announced, I was under the impression that it was going to be a whole collection of new songs from Beyonce and some other people that she brings in. But I quickly realized that they're just using the exact same songs from the album called The Lion King, The Gift, which is essentially the soundtrack album that was released last year, along with the movie. I did listen to some of the songs on the album. I have but I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of I don't want to call it a soundtrack because it's not like songs there were in the movie, like how like an actual soundtrack for a movie soundtrack is for traditionally, but it's more like an album that was quote unquote, they'll say it's like inspired by music from The Lion King or something like that. And those, for the most part, are more thematic in tone and more about like the sound and like the source material, or like relating to the source material, than like actually being good standalone songs or just music in general, which kind of turns me off as a listener. So, I mean, when I listened to that quote-unquote album that, again, came out with the Lion King movie from last year, I didn't really love it. And in terms of this visual album, the visuals didn't do anything to add to the music, to me, outside of giving you just some, like, well-shot, highly produced visuals of like Africa and fields and like Beyonce and like all these colorful dresses and like Jay-Z's in there somewhere and Blue Ivy's in there wearing all these clothes. I mean, it's cool from like if you're really into visuals, if you're really into like cinematography, if you're really into thematics, it's cool, it's good. That's just not really my alley, so I couldn't really appreciate it that much, and I don't think it really added anything to the music. I'm only there for the music. I'm only here for the music. I'm really only ever here for the music. So, if what you're doing doesn't add to the music, then I'm not really on board for it. Excuse me. Realistically, this quote-unquote album, I keep calling it a quote-unquote album because they called it officially a visual album, but really, it's more of a collection of music videos from a year-old album with some, like, Lion King tie-ins and then just, like, some random narrative shots or snippets thrown in between. It's oddly structured. I mean, I guess, like, it's like it's a movie, but I don't know. It's just, to me, it's unnecessary. I'll say that much. It's cool, I guess, but it's insanely unnecessary, in my opinion. In short, this movie / album didn't merit a full analysis as far as I'm concerned. Again, it's cool, but it doesn't. I'm not going to talk about it like I would in a normal album because I don't think it's made like a normal album. Like I said, to me, it's more of a promotional album, which, I mean, technically it is just a promotional album. But, I mean, I'm not because it's a promotional album. I'm not going to talk about it like I would a normal commercial album from an artist. If you're looking for something to put on in like the background, if you have Disney Plus and you're just looking for something to put on in the background while you're doing something, throw this on. It's not. It's what I would call unoffensive. It's very unassuming. It's just music, and if you want to see something cool to look at while you're listening to it, it's there. But if you're just interested in the music, which again, to me, isn't anything insanely special, just stream the actual album. Like the actual album that they released a full year ago. They released the deluxe, I think, last week, or like I think they released the deluxe album this Friday, actually, with this visual album. But I mean, I don't know why you would deluxe a promotional album, but a year after the movie came out. But whatever, who knows? While I do think that the vast majority of the songs that are here, like I said, are more of like a vibe than anything else, or just kind of like something to give you like an environment to really add to like the movie, I do still feel obligated to share the songs that I did like off the album, because I did like a good bit. Again, it's hard. These songs, if you're just going to listen to these 3 songs that I recommend, or any of the other songs on the album, you'll understand what I mean, where it's kind of hard to really place where you can listen to these songs outside of the context of this live action Lion King movie, or just kind of like the sound around it. It's kind of hard to take them away from that. But that being said, the 3 songs that I liked and that I took off this album all the way since last year are called Find Your Way Back, Nile, and Scar. Find Your Way Back is I think it's Beyonce. I think it's just Beyonce. The song Nile is, so Find Your Way Back is just Beyonce. The Nile is by Beyonce, and then it also has Kendrick Lamar in there. He has like some odd vocals in there. And then Scar is by 070 Shake, who I've talked about in this podcast, who I like a lot, and Jesse Reyes, who is whatever. I won't talk about Jesse Reyes here. But those 3 songs, I will say, I took from the album for my own personal collection of music. But, I mean, I can't say I've listened to them that much after I did. And, like I said, the other songs in this album are fine at the least, but they didn't really stick out to me nearly as much as those 3 did, with the exception of like a cool instrumental or vocal performance here or there. They're just kind of there. It's kind of there. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about this week in terms of new music. Again, as far as I know now, obviously it's only Monday, it's pretty early in the week, so who knows what's going to come out this weekend. But as far as I know, I don't know if there's much coming out this weekend as well, so we might have a little bit of a new music drought on our hands, unfortunately, which, I mean, I guess we were due for to an extent. We've kind of been getting bombarded with massive projects. But, I mean, summer is primetime music release territory, so if big artists want to release albums at some point, there's only a few weeks left in summer until you start hitting the cold of winter, which we desperately need. But yeah, thank you guys for listening, and I have been Nick Hope. This has been the Bittersweet Taste Podcast, New Music Monday, and I will see you guys on Thursday.